Thank you for joining us on this webinar about renewable energy opportunities for international companies in Victoria. I'm Julia Mills, the European Investment Director for Victoria, based in London, and my role is to support companies looking to set up or expand operations in the state. Our services, which are free of charge, range from market or regulatory information and introductions through to practical support setting up a company in Australia, including temporary office space and immigration assistance. Once in market, we continue to help with site selection, permitting, and try to overcome any barriers your business is facing. As you may be aware, Victoria is leading the way on renewable energy investment in Australia, thanks to the decision to move away from coal, coupled with high energy prices and ambitious targets for 50% renewable energy by 2030 and zero net emissions by 2050. In exciting news, Minister for Energy, the Environment and Climate Change, Lily D'Ambrosio, today announced the start of a market sounding process that will test industry interest and capacity for new solar, wind and other renewable energy projects to deliver at least a further 600 megawatts of renewable energy. Today we are privileged to have two speakers, Gabrielle Henry, Director of Industry Engagement and Development for the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, followed by Jonathan Philby, Investment Director at Octopus Investments, a UK company that's set up in Melbourne, who will discuss their experience in Victoria's solar sector. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce Gabrielle Henry, who will give an overview of the renewable energy sector and present opportunities in large-scale generation and emerging technologies. Over to you, Gabrielle.
Thanks very much, Julia. I hope everyone can hear us, and greetings from Melbourne to the various jurisdictions. I'm about to share a presentation with you to take you through a bit of background of the Victorian energy market and some of the investment opportunities. As mentioned, my name's Gabrielle Henry and I'm Director of Industry Engagement and Development in the Energy Group at the Victorian Government Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. And today I'd like to introduce you to the market, just to give you a bit of background on Victoria. So we're an internationally engaged economy which has got strong and consistent growth for more than 2 decades. Obviously we've got COVID-19 coming in recently, which has affected a bit of that, but we've also had private capital expenditure growing faster than the rest of Australia. It's got 24% of Australia's gross domestic product. And it's also got an economy bigger than Singapore, New Zealand and most Southeast Asian nations. Our competitive, low risk and transparent environment offers strong regulatory efficiency with a robust and transmission legal system, a AAA credit rating with competitive business costs and sophisticated financial services sector, and a highly skilled workforce with strong engineering and digital technology capabilities. We've also got a thriving international aviation hub which handles 1/3 of Australia's air freight market, and Australia's busiest container port which links seamlessly to fast growing Asia Pacific markets and a number of deep water ports across our southern coastline. Melbourne's one of the most livable cities and it's projected to be Australia's largest city by 2030. We've got a lifestyle focused capital with parks and open spaces, a strong sporting, entertainment and culinary culture and quality and accessible healthcare, which makes it easy to attract and retain talent. We've got a diverse range of foreign companies headquartered in Victoria and it's home to a number of key companies in the renewable energy sector, and I'll provide a few examples of those later. So Victoria's energy sector has been undergoing rapid transformation as technological advancements enable the decentralisation and democratisation of energy. We've got strong policy settings and clear planning frameworks which provide confidence to investors in this space. We've got operational energy demand that's forecast to increase significantly from 43,000 gigawatt hours in 2018-19 to over 56,000 gigawatt hours in around 2040. The Victorian Government set ambitious targets for both renewable energy generation and greenhouse gas reduction, as you can see in those graphics on the lower left. We've got targets of 25% by 2020, 40% by 2025, 50% by 2030 and a net zero greenhouse gas emissions target overall by 2050. These are helping to drive lasting change in the way we view, use and invest energy. So we've got a policy enabling investment, and we've established Victoria as a leader in renewable energy. Sorry, I've just sort of lost where I'm at with my point. We're on track to meet our renewable energy target of 25% this year. And this additional capacity has increased the reliability, put downward pressure on power prices, and has been a driver of investment and jobs. Our first renewable energy auction, launched in 2017, is delivering over $1 billion in capital investment and has contributed to a 70% increase in renewable energy jobs between 2018 and 2019. In addition to supporting 1.4 gigawatts of utility scale wind and solar generation, Victorian Government has also supported 114 megawatt hours in grid scale storage capacity. We've provided 20 million to drive new energy skills and technologies, 13 million for microgrids demonstration and piloting. We've undertaken a mandatory $2.3 billion smart meter rollout to homes and businesses, which has resulted in 99% coverage of this technology across the state. Enabled over 900 million in energy efficiency incentives and contributed 3 million for ultra rapid electric vehicle charging stations as a start to this sector. Our transition to renewable energy has been an economic success story, and it'll be a core component of our economic recovery post-COVID. So stop press, as Julia mentioned, very exciting announcement just today. Our Minister for Energy, Environment, Climate Change has announced the start of a market sounding process that will test industry interest and capacity for new solar, wind and other energy projects. The market sounding will also explore the potential for electricity reliant industries and businesses to buy renewable energy along with government through this process. This represents the next step in Victoria's plans to continue to drive significant investment in our renewable energy zones, with more support to come to expedite and streamline grid connections. The market sounding today will test the capacity of industry to deliver at least a further 600 megawatts of renewable energy, and that's enough to power every hospital and school in Victoria, our train network and a range of other government infrastructure and services. Victoria is on track to meet its legislated 2020 renewable energy target of 25%, and procuring new generation will make a significant contribution to meeting the 2025 target of 40% renewable energy and the 2030 target of 50%, as well as our legislated target of net zero emissions by 2050. With renewable energy supporting thousands of jobs and local businesses across Victoria, our second renewable energy auction will provide investment certainty, support local supply chains and help drive our economic recovery from coronavirus, as well as delivering more reliable, affordable energy to households across Victoria. Further information, along with opportunities to engage and be part of this process, will be released in due course, and you can see that there's a link below if you want to keep up to date. Go to www.energy.vic.gov.au/VREC2 and watch this space. So I'll now provide you a little bit of an overview to Victoria's national energy market and our electricity network. We're part of a bigger picture as part of the state. Our national energy market stretches over 5,000 kilometres. That's the biggest grid in the world, I understand, across the eastern states. And you can see the states coloured on the map on the lower right. This services almost 90% of the Australian population and delivers around 200 terawatt hours of electricity annually. Our privatised energy system consists of over 20 registered participants, a transmission network operated by AusNet Services, and 5 distribution businesses and over 25 retailers. Interesting to note is that our national markets rule maker, rule enforcer and market operator are all managed at the national level. In addition to our extensive electricity network, Victoria also enjoys the most extensive gas network in the world, and we've got many households and businesses heavily reliant on its supply. So we've got 6 candidate renewable energy zones, or REZs, that have been identified across our state. These are the pale bluish blobs on the map on the right. And these REZs enable the clusters of large-scale renewable energy through coordinated investment in electricity transmission and generation. They'll assist in optimising transmission development and may guide decisions about future project placement. The map shows the zones for solar in the north and southwest, pumped hydro in the southeast, pumped hydro in the northeast, and wind in the south and west of the state, each following major electricity transmission routes. And I hope you can't hear my cat in the background. I think it's complaint o'clock. Yes, she agreed. So Victorian opportunities, there's a range of different areas where we have potential in the state. And on this map on the right, you can see our electricity distribution and transmission network, and that connects energy users to the various renewable energy generation sources across the state. Victoria's innovative energy sector, including utilities and homegrown tech companies, are ready to partner and drive new ways of thinking, moving, storing and using energy. On the following slides, I'll provide an overview of Victoria's wind, large-scale solar, grid-scale storage, bioenergy and waste-to-energy, marine and offshore clean energy, hydrogen and digital energy technologies. It's quite a lot to cover, so I'll be doing it at a pretty cracking pace and at a pretty high level. And while I won't go into them in any detail today, there's also opportunities in the following sectors in residential solar PV and storage, where you can participate in Victoria's progressive decentralisation and democratisation of household energy, supported by $1.3 billion solar homes program. In electric vehicles, you can activate specialist skills to help advance Victoria's electric vehicle capability, including public infrastructure and supporting technology. And in energy efficiency, there are economy-wide incentives for new energy efficiency products for consumer cost savings and emission reduction, most notably under our Victorian Energy Upgrades program. So just an overview of sort of the wind resource. Victoria's been the location of choice for wind developers since the early 2000s. Our state's wind resource is amongst the best in the world, especially throughout the southwest, central highlands, central eastern and eastern coastal districts. Victoria's southern coastline, which lies in the path of strong westerly wind belt between latitudes of 35 and 60 degrees, boasts high average wind speeds exceeding 8 metres per second in many areas. With 29 operating wind farms with a combined capacity of over 2,300 megawatts, 8 currently under construction with a combined capacity of over 1,700 megawatts and a further 6 with development approval, there are investment opportunities to join an established sector and leverage our world-class wind resources. There are specific opportunities for international investors to partner with local companies in a range of areas to boost the local manufacture and or assembly of wind turbine components, concrete or hybrid wind turbine towers and carbon fibre blades, for example. Over in the solar sector, the state went from operating, no operating solar farms at the beginning of 2018 to 13 by mid-2020, with a further 6 under construction and many more in the pipeline, and that's a pretty rapid evolution. The Murray River RES, which is in the north, and the Central North Victoria RES, which have median annual average solar global horizontal irradiance, or GHI, exceeding 1,800 kilowatt hours per square metre and 1,700 kilowatt hours per square metre respectively, have long-term potential to become major solar hubs of Victoria. And for those of you in the Northern Territory, this is the Northern Hemisphere, this is a little bit counterintuitive. Obviously, our sunniest spots are in the north, while it's generally kind of colder in the south, colder and windier in the south of the state. The regions with available network capacity have significant development potential, and planned near-term transmission upgrades will unlock even more resources. Victoria's abundant solar radiation and rapidly maturing market provides development opportunities, particularly when co-located with other generation sources or coupled with storage technologies. Strong policy settings, ambitious renewable energy targets and clear planning frameworks provide confidence to investors, and our advanced manufacturing and supply chain capabilities position local suppliers to support project development. There are specific opportunities for international investors to partner with local companies to boost the local manufacture or assembly of the following areas in PV modules, inverters and solar tracking systems, for example. Over to storage. Our large-scale storage sector provides new ways to deliver and manage electricity, from new battery technologies to thousands of potential pumped hydro sites to support our electricity grid and increasing proportion of renewable energy. In 2017, the Victorian Government committed $25 million in funding for 2 grid-connected utility-scale batteries to provide backup power and grid stabilisation functions. Just an interesting case study that Melbourne's Monash Uni has partnered with UK energy storage company Redtea for the deployment of a 1 megawatt-hour commercial energy storage system, which is currently the largest in Australia and the first ever hybrid energy storage system to come online globally that provides vanadium redox flow and lithium-ion technology. Victoria's universities and innovators are also leading research and development and creating new opportunities across the energy storage industry. Some examples include microgrids, graphene supercapacitors, hybrid energy storage systems, pumped hydro technology, lithium-ion alternatives such as metal air and sodium-based batteries, reversible fuel cells, battery management systems and battery recycling. There's some specific opportunities in the following areas to partner with local companies for boosting the local manufacture and assembly of large-scale batteries, energy storage enclosures and BESS components. Over to bioenergy and waste to energy. Earlier this year in February, the Victorian Government released Recycling Victoria, and this is a 10-year, $300 million circular economy strategy to completely overhaul Victoria's recycling sector. $10 million has been provided to support early entrance into Victoria's waste to energy market, including grant or loan funding and investment facilitation. There's a shift towards a circular economy by diverting waste from landfill towards energy recovery. Just to give a bit of context, Victoria currently generates about around 13 million tonnes of waste per year, of which 4 million is sent to landfill. And there's about 10 million tonnes of organic residue available for biomass, feedstock and waste to energy investments each year. Over to offshore clean energy. Victoria is home to Australia's first proposed offshore wind farm, which is off the state's southeast coast. And they're not the only ones who are interested in Victoria's substantial offshore clean energy resources in this emerging sector. We enjoy world-class offshore wind and marine energy resources located close to major load centres, ports and supporting infrastructure in high voltage transmission in the Latrobe Valley and Gippsland in the east of the state, as well as connections to the transmission network in Portland in the southwest of the state. Our well-developed marine construction industry could help support the future development of supply chain capabilities. The Commonwealth Government is developing enabling legislation to facilitate the granting of exploration licences for such developments. This legislation is expected to be passed later this year, and there should be a framework in place sort of ready for developments during 2021. Also of note, our market operator is developing, AEMO is developing a RES for this sector, which is looking further out to 2035. Over to what tends to be a bit of a hot topic at the moment, and that's the hydrogen sector. So the Victorian Government's actively encouraging investment in hydrogen. We're leveraging zero emissions technology solutions across a broad range of applications, with the potential for a burgeoning domestic and export market backed by our extensive natural gas network, abundant renewable energy sources and connections to Asia. There's a rapidly growing focus on hydrogen, including the release of several reports. At the Commonwealth level, we've had the National Hydrogen Strategy released in November last year, and the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, known locally as CSIRO, released a hydrogen roadmap in the past year as well. So later this year, the Victorian Government plans to release an industry development plan to map the future development of this sector in our state. Victoria recognises the potential for hydrogen to play a role servicing the increasing need for electricity storage and grid services, which is enabled through our abundant renewable energy resources, the pipeline of renewable energy projects and our ambitious renewable energy targets to meet growing demand for low emissions energy supply. Our extensive natural gas pipeline infrastructure holds significant potential to store and distribute hydrogen and supports the decarbonisation of our gas networks and industrial and transport sectors. Our gas utilities are motivated to explore options in exploiting hydrogen, and they're also a key driver into the Australian Hydrogen Centre's feasibility studies into hydrogen blending into Victoria's gas networks, of which the Victorian Government is a founding supporter. Victoria also has high potential to export hydrogen to global markets. We've got deepwater ports, a large intermodal freight network with major road transport routes from Australia's busiest port, and a strong priority to decarbonise. We've got a relatively dense population spread compared to Australian states, and I'm sorry those in Europe, you'll find that a little bit laughable. We're not as dense as many of the countries in Europe or in Asia, but compared to other Australian states we are. But what that means sort of for us is that, you know, we have renewable energy sources with relatively close proximities to population, transport and export centres, as well as sort of routes to market. We've also got a world first demonstration project in the hydrogen energy supply chain project to produce and ship hydrogen to Japan, and a national export industry with growing interest from large energy importers. Finally, our skilled workforce and local manufacturing expertise, strong manufacturing base and advanced manufacturing capabilities is equipped to expand supply chain capabilities. Okay, we're getting near to the end. So Australia's leading digital electricity market enjoys world-leading comprehensive residential and business smart meter coverage, and this generates rich data ready for next generation energy products and services. Our state undertook a compulsory smart meter rollout in 2013, resulting in 99% penetration across homes and businesses, placing us at the forefront of digital innovation in the energy space, both in Australia and across the world. The Victorian Government's piloting an energy data hub for the state and aims to further unlock the potential to use this rich data source for the benefit of energy consumers. A consumer data right in energy is also due to be introduced by the Commonwealth Government later next year, and that should unlock further opportunities for products and services in this emerging market. As I mentioned before, there's a number of energy companies looking to already established in Victoria. I hope that the information that I've given you today with an introduction into Victorian energy sector and the opportunities for investment has piqued your interest and you found it informative. And we'd like you to invite you to join us and these other companies in this dynamic market, which is rich in opportunities. I've just provided here some contact details, sort of if you'd like to discuss this, any elements in this presentation or investment opportunities further. If you've got any queries specifically in relation to content in this presentation, I suggest you contact me, but if you've got any other general market or investment related queries, your best first point of contact would be Julia Mills for Europe-based companies, or Daniel Bizignano at Invest Victoria for Asian-based companies, and we very much look forward to hearing from you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for your insights on Victoria's clean energy ambitions and where you see the opportunities in the market for foreign companies. Fantastic news about VRET too, and I'm sure we'll be getting some more questions on that later. I would like to hand over now to Jonathan Philby, Investment Director at Octopus Investments, a UK company that chose Melbourne as their home. Launched in 2018, Octopus Investments Australia forms part of the Octopus Group, which collectively manages more than $15 billion over multiple strategies and has 800 people worldwide. Over to you, John.
Excellent. Thanks, Julia. And hi to everyone joining us on the webinar. Before we get started, I can certainly attest to some of the aspects of life in Victoria that Gabrielle mentioned. As a former resident of East London, I've certainly found my home here in Fitzroy, and the food and coffee are certainly world class, and I've enjoyed the livability of the city here. But I digress. I only have 10 minutes to take you through why we found Australia in particular such a compelling renewable energy market for our business, and one of the few non-European countries we've actually expanded into. So first, First, just a quick agenda. I'll give you a quick overview as to who we are for those of you who aren't aware of Octopus Investments. Broadly, the macro story in Australia and from an investment point of view, why this is so compelling, and some specific examples I'll end on for our transition from London to Melbourne and the support we got from the Victorian Government. So just very quickly, Octopus, as Julia mentioned, is probably best known as a fund manager, where we have over 15 billion of assets under management. Around 6 billion of our assets are energy generation assets, and that's over 270 utility scale sites representing about 2.5 gigawatts. The other parts of our business, we have an energy supply business. So Octopus Energy is an energy retailer with over 105 million customers, recently received investment directly from Origin Energy. And finally, the last part of our business is a technology business. And this is the underlying business that supports Octopus Energy, as well as some of the grid scale technologies we're investing in to support the integration of renewables into the grid. We've invested in quite a large team here because of the opportunity that we've seen here. This, while this slide is actually relatively new, it's already out of date. We've added a few more, and we're now 15 strong within Melbourne. This is a slide I took out of our ESG pack because I think it really highlights the importance of this strategy for coming into Australia. Coming here and setting up an office and really integrating not just into the development community, into the investment community, but into the actual communities within Australia has been really important part of our success here thus far, and we see it as a core part of our strategy going forward. But more broadly, from a macro perspective, high level, why Australia? Well, here is the kind of projected energy mix of Australia going out and out into the future, and how much of that is kind of forecast thus far to be provided by coal. So very similar to what we saw in the UK when we were started investing into renewables 10 years ago. Quite a large base load of coal and fossil fuel renewable energy generation. And, you know, and now the UK is phasing out coal altogether by 2024. And, you know, for the first time since the 1800s, we have, weeks where we have zero coal in the grid. Australia is now in that transition, quite a precipitous change from that picture in the UK that looks very much like this to one that we have now in the UK. Australia, that precipitous change is now starting here, and it's quite exciting. And this is the reason why. The massive coal fleet that underpins the large baseload supply of electricity in Australia is getting increasingly older, becoming increasingly unreliable, breaking down. So that massive removal of capacity is what provides kind of a long-term systemic net short position of energy, and that replacing that supply is what is the compelling investment story here in Australia. So nearly 170 billion of new energy investment is needed to really transition the baseload coal supply dominated energy mix towards a renewable future. And what is going to replace that? Well, renewables are already the lowest cost of generation. So unlike when we got into renewables in Europe 10 years ago, significant subsidies were needed to be able to make renewables competitive. Here, renewables is the only competition when it comes to replacing the old fossil fuel baseload generators. I'll end very quickly with some of the support we got from Invest Victoria. coming down to Australia and entering a new market was a big challenge for us. We have a significant portfolio around Europe, and when we were considering where else in the world to invest and where else in the world to set up, we were looking at some of the largest markets in the world: India, the US, China, and here. And we ended up going with Australia for much of the macro reasons that we discussed, but also some of the key macro factors that Gabrielle pointed out around the larger economy within Australia as well as in Victoria. So making that transition, before we arrived, we had almost 6 separate trips, and to get a lay of the land, to talk with the various regulators, not just in the electricity sector, but in the financial sector, and setting up meetings with some of the key people here. So those first meetings of us coming to Australia, understanding the landscape, the Invest Victoria was very helpful in kind of helping us put together that agenda. We eventually flew down one of our managing directors and had, a 2-week agenda that was chock full of talking with everyone from the superannuation community to the to players within the renewable energy sector, as well as some of the energy regulatory bodies. Some really key help when we were launching our business. Mainly visa support for key executives, of which I consider myself one. Thank you very much. Who took a lot of stress out of that process. Office launch, when we were first down here, all we had was a WeWork space. So being able to use Invest Victoria's event space at 55 Collins Street was great. We were even able to get the Minister, Lily D'Ambrosio, down to speak and to open up. And this was a key event for our potential customers here in Australia to kind of see to have that vote of confidence here. Additionally, continued support with meetings in the regulatory space, both in the financial as well as energy space. And also, somewhat more importantly, now that we've been here 2.5 years, ongoing support. So one of the highlights of our time here has been hosting the Lord Mayor of the City of London. Invest Victoria tapped us to co-host this event, and it was a great way for us to engage in a real meaningful way with some of our target customers, that we were able to bring them in, engage them with a robust discussion around renewable energy, investment in Victoria, investment in Australia, and some of the support and how the cross-pollination of the UK and Australia can lead to kind of a more robust and really more robust energy, more robust energy investment opportunity here. And of course, continued visa support. My 482 is being renewed, and the team here have been very helpful in continuing to navigate that for us. So I appreciate that was quite a rush through, but a lot to cover in just 10 minutes, and happy to take some of the questions. Thanks very much, Julia. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. It's great to hear how successful Octopus has been in the Australian market after entering just 2 years ago. And we're going to move on now to some of the questions we've received from the audience. One of the questions that has had the most interest, and I think this relates partly to the announcement about VRET 2. Gabrielle, I think this is one for you. It's will transmission upgrades be fast-tracked to allow for the connection of the new capacity?
Not exactly. We'll obviously need to take into account the design sort of a future auction to ensure that it's meeting the needs of the Victorian energy system, and taking into account sort of the existing requirements and the existing operation of the transmission system. I think that all of that will be taken into account as a whole, and there's a range of things that the Victorian Government are doing around transmission. You'll kind of recognise there's been a great degree of change in our energy market. You know, we've gone from having centrally located coal-fired generation in one part of the state to having renewable energy generation right across the state, and the transmission and distribution network has obviously had to evolve with that quite rapidly, and also our national operators have had to also adapt to going from having the occasional very large coal-fired or gas-fired generator connecting to have quite a number of smaller generators, or relatively smaller generators, particularly in the wind and solar areas connecting in different parts of the state. So the state government is very much looking at what will be required in the transmission network to support our renewable energy ambitions, and also for any future auction, but I don't have any definitive statements other than to say we're working with the appropriate national bodies to make sure that we have appropriate solutions in place.
Thanks, Gabrielle. And on a related note, is there a plan as to how the 600 megawatts in VREC2 will be spread amongst the different types of renewables? Is there a carve out as yet for any subsectors?
No, there's not, and that will be, you know, the design of the sort of 600 megawatt to be procured. How that will work will also be very much informed by the market sounding process that will be sort of shortly kicked off. Obviously, that's you know, making sure that what we'll be designing and what we'll be procuring will be fit for purpose. But beyond saying that we're keen that this supports our renewable energy ambitions and our stated renewable energy targets, we're not providing any specific you know, some guidelines on how that we split up between renewable energy types.
Okay, thank you. And one for you, Jonathan, just in terms of, obviously, as a business that's relatively new to market, is there anything that you found in Victoria that's been more open or more challenging? Is there any particular advice that you'd have for anyone listening in?
I think the important thing is really being here to be a part of the community here within renewable energy. The challenge of this market is that it isn't one that you can simply drop in a couple of analysts with a spreadsheet and think it's going to be okay. This is a market that takes really understanding. It takes being here and being a part of the conversation with government, and really being a part of that conversation to really understand where the value and the opportunity lies. So yeah, being here is very important for success in this market.
And are there any particular challenges that you've faced and how you've dealt with those?
When it comes to challenges, it's any economy that's transitioning from fossil fuels to renewables, that transition presents challenges. And, you know, I think it's no secret some of the challenges that we've seen and faced on the grid. So understanding the diligence, understanding the lessons learned from jurisdictions that we've operated in previously, and how those economies have changed, how those grids have adapted, and using those lessons here are really important. So, for example, a company that we've invested in, Reactive Technologies, is looking at a grid scale inertia in the UK, and are now trialing that within Australia, and specifically within Victoria as well. So understanding those lessons learned from, you know, the jurisdictions you've been in, understanding how transitions have happened in those jurisdictions, and applying those lessons here is really, really important.
Great, thanks very much, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, I guess, other questions, Gabrielle, is there a prospectus available outlining these renewable energy investment opportunities in Victoria?
I think the best place to look for that is our Australian Energy Market Operator, or AEMO's integrated system plan. So in June 2020, so just a couple of months ago, they released their 2020 integrated system plan. So this is a whole of system plan that provides an integrated roadmap for the development of the national electricity market. And it also includes sort of further information on the renewable energy zones. I sort of suggest they obviously update that every year to make sure that it sort of reflects the current market and the sort of the evolution to date, as well as being sort of as the operator, looking at as a sort of forward-looking projection to sort of understand where our system is going.
And in terms of timing for the second VRET, do you have an indication of sort of what kind of timescale you're looking at?
Yeah, so obviously, as we've announced today, there'll be a market sounding process kicking off. We're obviously wanting to make sure that we're doing things in a timely manner, and we recognise that we will need renewable energy investment to meet our upcoming targets to 2025 and 2030. So in terms of, we don't have a specific time frame about when an auction will be launched, but as I say, watch this space. We anticipate that it should happen fairly soon after the market sounding process.
And I know, Gabrielle, you partly addressed the transmission question earlier, but we have had a few others about the grid connection process and dealing with the market operator. Do you have any guidance on that?
Yeah, so I guess, there are specific guidelines for dealing with the sort of with our market operator. And as I mentioned, because there's been increased connections of renewables in recent years, the operator has had to adapt, and they're always looking at ways of improving that process. They've made some changes to the queuing system for how renewable energy generators are connected. And they're sort of aiming to obviously provide the developers with the best possible market signals, sort of to make sure that that process is as straightforward as it can be. And they're obviously making sure that, they're working collaboratively with those that are connecting. Whilst we recognise that there are quite a lot happening in that space, they're working through some of those challenges to implement any necessary improvements to the process.
Great, and maybe Jonathan, I don't know to what extent you've had experience of dealing with AEMO. What's your view on sort of how things have been running in Australia?
Well, I think the entire industry has been learning quite rapidly. When it comes, we've connected our first assets in New South Wales, sorry, but it's and going through that connection process was certainly a learning experience. But our advice coming out of that would be to engage AEMO often, early, and collaboratively. And that's the best way that we've worked on getting our site connected. Demonstrating that you're here for the long term, demonstrating that you're aligned for a long-term performance of your asset and a long-term support for the grid was crucial for us.
Great, thank you. And another question for you, Gabrielle. Is the support from the Victorian Government independent of politics? So do we expect this kind of push for renewables and support to continue regardless of which party wins office in the future?
I have to say that's something I can't predict. That's obviously up to the individual parties in government as to what their policy priorities will be. As a humble public servant, we hope for some continuity to be able to provide that, reassurance to market. I think the reassurance that I can provide is that Victoria's renewable energy targets are legislated. So that's obviously independent of politics. We're therefore reassured that our renewable energy targets of 40% by 2025 and 50% by 2030, as well as our net zero emission target out to 2050, that is already set, and that's independent of the government that's in power at the time.
Great. And just in terms of comparisons, Jonathan, obviously you mentioned that your first project was in New South Wales. How have you found that Victoria compares to other states in terms of opportunities in renewable energy?
I think there are some really compelling opportunities here in Victoria. As Gabrielle outlined, the res zones kind of highlight some significant areas where investment can grow. The majority of quite a lot of our future pipeline is Victorian based. And that's driven a lot by some of the core market fundamentals that Gabrielle mentioned around, one of the highest GDP states within Australia. That feeds directly through to energy demand. So a robust energy demand really underpins kind of, the long-term fundamentals for us. And some of the grid announcements that have been made, the res zones as well, are kind of factoring, really core into our future investment thesis for the pipeline that we have here.
And just in terms of the types of company we've seen coming in, so we've seen lots of wind and solar developers. Do you think there is more room in the market for further developers, or where do you see kind of the trends in terms of opportunities?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are going to really be around providing holistic solutions to customers. So, within Europe, especially as the development of the renewable energy industry overall, was really heavily subsidized base. And that was, understandable to get the industry up and running. And, Australia is really in a unique position where a lot of that historic subsidization of this industry has brought down the cost of new generations, such that, that just from a pure fundamental point of view, renewable energy is just cheaper to build than any other form of renewable energy. So from that standpoint, yes, renewable energy is the only real way to replace at scale the capacity that's being removed from the market. And the types of systems that are going to be designed need to fit within and fit the capacity that's being removed. So whether that's an increase in demand side response, whether that's an increase in kind of assets that are able to firm themselves, such as incorporating storage, those types of solutions, just kind of a different framework, a different frame of mind. Instead of building, connecting, just being subsidized, you really need to think about how are customers using energy and how can I fit within that ecosystem. So it's a slight change, but certainly important here.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for just probably one more question. Gabrielle, the next one with the most votes is actually, when is the next PV auction expected in Victoria? And is there going to be an energy storage part of that as a requirement?
So I think if I can sort of couple that into today's announcement, about the market sounding process kicking off a subsequent auction, large-scale PV will obviously be part of that. It won't be a dedicated PV auction. And just around the energy storage, look, we anticipate that there is, going to be need to be that, our marketers need to have sufficient dispatchable generation capacity. And we're looking into options of being able to sort of do that, and potentially in the form of battery storage. And that's something that will obviously be considered about as part of an upcoming auction. And also, as I mentioned, that, what comes in as part of the market sounding process will help inform that.
And will that auction be based purely on price, or co-benefits such as economic development and social outcomes I know in the last VREP there was quite a high local content requirement, for example.
Yeah, that's thanks for asking that. That's a very good question. You know, I think the local content requirements will be set, you know, in accordance with the Local Jobs First Act 2003, sort of to go back to the legislation. You know, back in the first auction in 2017, we set really strong local content requirements, and that's resulted in really significant investment in our Victorian renewable energy supply chain, you know, around things sort of fabrication and sort of assembly. So, you know, we anticipate that that will be a component. It's yielded some really positive results sort of for the local industry, and, you know, we would expect that to be part of the consideration for an upcoming auction.
Thanks. And I think maybe just very, very quickly, there's a question about green hydrogen. As you mentioned, this is a very hot topic at the moment, and I know all the states in Australia are really pushing it. So how open is Victoria to green hydrogen technologies that are already adopted overseas, and how can these companies engage with the Victorian Government?
Sure, yeah, we're definitely open to, you know, new technologies. It's a really rapidly evolving space, and, you know, we recognise that we're going to really need to draw on the international investors and developments in this area to be able to build our local green hydrogen economy. In terms of how to engage with the government, sort of my team and I, you know, meet with a range of stakeholders in the hydrogen sector, but I would urge you to contact your local representative, as I mentioned, Julia in Europe and Daniel in Asia in the first instance, so that they can direct you through to the right people to have that conversation.
That's great. Thanks. So, well, we've now really nearly run out of time. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you both to you, Gabrielle, and to Jonathan, and to everyone for joining today. We hope that you found this session useful. As Jonathan mentioned, Invest Victoria is here to help you in market. So if you have any questions sort of more about investing and setting up, then we're very happy to help there. So I just want to say thanks again, everyone. I don't know if there's any last words from you, Gabrielle and Jonathan.
Just a little bit of gratitude. Thank you very much for the continued support.
Thank you.
Terrific. And thanks everyone for your time. And I really look forward to having further conversations with many of you about these opportunities for investment in our state.
That's great. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.